Life's good. LG's tagline is poetically ironic due to the company's recent failures to release anything with any kind of substance. The Korean giant was once known in the smartphone space for its ultra pretty displays and cameras, with devices like the G3 and G4 being massive successes as a result of said innovations in areas of the phone that users truly cared about. The company stumbled a bit after the G4, with its successor being considered by most hardware enthusiasts an absolute flop. And I hate to see this happen because I am myself a huge LG fan and have been since the LG Nexus 4 way back in late 2012. Today I want to discuss LG's current state in the smartphone division, specifically analysing and evaluating market share, sales figures, and naturally the individual hardware releases since the G2. Hey guys, my name is Ryan Thomas for Failtech, and this is LG. Life's not so good. Briefly mentioning the flagships recently released at MWC, the G8 and V50 are rarely being talked about when compared with the competitors' offerings. Both iterative improvements over last year's models, they seem to lack the real features of what the 2019 smartphone market is offering, such as a hole-punch display, minimal bezels, and in-display fingerprint scanners, funnily enough all characteristics affecting the front of the device. But let's just forget the new handsets for a second. What about LG's history, coloured with past phones that shook up their respective time periods and whose great innovations gave LG the legendary status that it possesses? Let's jump all the way back to the G2, a phone that, let's face it, looks absolutely gorgeous with minimal bezels even way back when. According to data curated by mobiforge.com, LG had 3.8% market share at the time, only being beaten by Samsung, Nokia and Apple. That might not sound like much, but it puts LG in 4th place when, right now, it's way down in 7th. The device itself started the legendary rear volume and lock button layout, and the device was well received as well as the best spec phone of that era. It was a true Galaxy S4 competitor, which is what all the big names were aiming at the time. A year later, the G3 smashed the screen resolution game, and LG's profile was right up there, with a competitive smartphone aimed at destroying the Galaxy S5 and iPhone 5S. They didn't quite achieve their aim, but they did leave a mark, with many reviewers praising LG for its bold move to put a Quad HD display in a phone, along with the fact that, at the time, the bezels were still impressively small. The G4 release resulted in an onslaught of problems for the Korean giants. From the overheating issues to the famous hardware deficiency that plagued devices across the world, resulting in boot loops and disgruntled customers, the G4 itself was set up for success in theory. Its beautiful display and ultra impressive camera were features that made its competitors look like chumps, but its underlying problems gave the device its title, the LG G4, synonymous with boot loops. This is where things took a dip. This is where life was not so good. When the G5 was released, it was cool and hip to have a modular smartphone, and the idealists of the world bought them up. However, the issue with this is that the smartphone wasn't very stable, strong, or even modular. Yes, you had removable batteries and some weird add-ons, but the fact that the functionality never really changed meant that you were left with a poorly made phone with a smaller screen than the previous, and a hefty bill if you were to buy those modules. Sure, it sold decently, but left many asking for more. The G6 was a hit and miss from LG, since it pioneered that 18:9 display, had a fantastic build and design, was packed with features, and released at a good price. The issue here was that it housed a Snapdragon 821 chip, when just a month later, the world's more popular Galaxy S8 would ship with the new Snapdragon 835 system on the chip, ruling the G6 as plain redundant. The G6 did get a lot of praise from reviewers far and wide, including myself, but it did make you wonder whether you should have saved and bought the more current competitor, the S8, and LG's worldwide smartphone market share was dropping fast. The G7 was never really talked about. Sure, it got a review here and there, but very few people actually had it as competing in the leagues with the S9, iPhone X and Mate 20 Pro, just about putting it in the space of the 6T, and the G7 would often lose due to its higher price point at the time. As a smartphone analyst and big fan of LG, I worry that the G8 and V50 won't push the legendary company back to its former spot alongside Samsung and Apple. Their lack of innovation and failure to create anything original is showing to be their crux, and with smartphones becoming more and more alike, it's becoming harder and harder to push the boat out and make something special. LG have had a big hand in shaping the smartphone market over the years, and for their sake, I really hope we get to see them rise again, bringing the brilliance that they once did, and making life good.